The call came in on a quiet December evening. A man reported discovering a horrific scene inside an apartment in Comrat, Moldova. His voice trembled as he described what he had found: a lifeless body, mutilated, organs discarded like trash. It wasn't the kind of report you expect, even as a seasoned investigator. The details were gruesome, almost too extreme to believe, but we knew we had to act quickly. When we arrived at the apartment, the air was heavy with a metallic stench. Inside, the scene was even more disturbing than we had imagined. The body of a woman lay on the floor, her face frozen in a mixture of shock and pain. Her chest cavity was open, her organs removed with precision and carelessness in equal measure. Blood had soaked into the floor, the walls, and the discarded remains in the nearby trash. We identified the victim as Parascovia Leikovic, a respected woman in the community who had recently returned to Moldova from working in Germany. Her body bore the marks of rage and, strangely, knowledge. Whoever had done this knew how to cause pain and how to use anatomical knowledge to devastating effect. Interviews with neighbors and witnesses led us to her daughter, Anna Leikovic, a 21-year-old medical student. The initial report seemed improbable. Anna was described as intelligent, ambitious, and sociable. But as the details emerged, a darker picture began to form. Anna's boyfriend was the one who found the body. According to him, Anna had come to his apartment hours after the crime, calm and composed. She had demanded champagne and acted as though nothing had happened. It was only later, in a chillingly casual tone, that she mentioned killing her mother. The boyfriend didn't believe her at first, thinking it was some grotesque joke. But curiosity drove him back to Anna's apartment, where he discovered the horrifying truth. By the time we tracked Anna down, she had disappeared. We spent 72 tense hours searching for her, eventually locating her at a friend's house. She didn't resist arrest, but her demeanor was unnerving. She appeared detached, almost uninterested in the events unfolding around her. As we escorted her into custody, her expression remained blank, as though she were a spectator rather than the prime suspect in one of the most horrific crimes we had ever seen. Back at the station, Anna refused to cooperate. She barely spoke during questioning, and when she did, her words were cryptic and nonsensical. It was difficult to reconcile the young woman before us with the savage act we were investigating. She showed no remorse, no fear, no emotion of any kind. Her indifference was as chilling as the crime itself. As the evidence mounted, the timeline of the crime became clearer. On the evening of December 11th, Parascovia had arrived at Anna's apartment after traveling from Germany. She intended to confront her daughter about her worsening substance abuse, and had arranged for Anna to enter a detox program. Witnesses close to the family described the tension between mother and daughter, with Parascovia desperate to help Anna regain control of her life. But when she revealed her plans, the argument that followed spiraled into unimaginable violence. Anna attacked her mother with a sharp kitchen knife, inflicting fatal wounds. But she didn't stop there. Using her medical knowledge, she removed her mother's organs while she was still alive. The level of brutality was staggering, even for seasoned investigators. It wasn't just a crime, it was an explosion of rage and detachment that defied explanation. After the murder, Anna cleaned herself, styled her hair, and left for her boyfriend's apartment. There was no evidence of panic, no sign that she had attempted to conceal what she had done. Instead, she acted as though it were just another evening, as though nothing had changed. It was a level of detachment that raised questions not just about her guilt, but about her state of mind. As we prepared the case, the pieces began to fit together, but they painted a deeply troubling picture. Anna's substance abuse, her strained relationship with her mother, and her sudden outburst of violence created a narrative that was as tragic as it was horrific. Still, one question lingered. Why? Why had she turned on the woman who had given her life, who had come back to save her from herself? It was a question that would haunt us throughout the investigation. The apartment was eerily silent when we returned to comb through the scene again. Everything about that night, December 11th, 2020, pointed to a crime of such brutality and suddenness that it was hard to fathom. The details we gathered began to reveal a story of a relationship fractured beyond repair and a night that spiraled out of control. Parascovia Leikovic had come to Comrat to intervene in her daughter's life. Anna, once a promising medical student and aspiring social media influencer, had veered into a world of substance abuse and reckless behavior. Parascovia, aware of her daughter's downward spiral after a recent overdose, had arranged for Anna to enter a detox program. But Anna's independence and stubbornness were well known to those close to her. This intervention was bound to ignite conflict. At 6:26 p.m., Parascovia entered Anna's apartment. Witness statements and accounts from family suggest that the initial conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument. Parascovia, desperate to save her daughter, pressed Anna to accept help. She revealed her plan for the detox program, a decision made without Anna's consent. To a daughter already resistant to control, this news acted as a match to dry tinder. What happened next is reconstructed from forensic evidence and the testimony of Anna's boyfriend. The argument erupted into violence. Anna, fueled by anger and possibly under the influence, grabbed a sharp kitchen knife. The first attack was sudden and ferocious. Wounds on Parascovia's hands indicated she tried to defend herself, but the strikes were relentless. Blood spattered across the kitchen and living room as the struggle moved through the apartment. But the horror didn't stop there. After incapacitating her mother, Anna used her knowledge of anatomy to inflict unimaginable injuries. She removed her mother's heart, lungs, and intestines while she was still alive. The precision of the incisions and the deliberate placement of the discarded organs in the trash painted a picture of a perpetrator detached from the humanity of her victim. What we couldn't understand was the complete lack of hesitation. This wasn't a panicked crime, it was methodical, cold, and deeply unsettling. Anna's actions seemed to be driven by something far beyond anger, a state of mind that felt unmoored from reality. After the murder, Anna's behavior defied any conventional logic. Instead of fleeing or hiding the crime, she cleaned herself, took a shower, and changed into fresh clothes. She styled her hair and left the apartment as though she were heading to a casual outing. Her destination was her boyfriend's home, where she acted as if nothing extraordinary had happened. According to her boyfriend, Anna was calm and composed. She demanded champagne, a request he fulfilled, confused by her demeanor. Hours later, in an almost offhand manner, she mentioned that she had killed her mother. He initially thought it was a morbid joke, but Anna's refusal to elaborate left him uneasy. When she fell asleep, his curiosity got the better of him. He slipped out of his apartment and returned to hers. What he found was beyond anything he could have imagined. The gruesome scene inside confirmed Anna's horrifying confession. He immediately contacted the police, and within hours, we were at the apartment facing the evidence of a crime that defied understanding. Anna's arrest did not come easily. By the time we identified her as the prime suspect, she had disappeared. Over the next 72 hours, our team worked tirelessly to track her down. Leads were sparse, but eventually, we found her at a friend's house. She surrendered without resistance, her face devoid of emotion. It was as if she didn't grasp the gravity of what she had done. Even during questioning, Anna remained detached. Her responses were vague, at times nonsensical, and offered no insight into her motive. She seemed unfazed by the charges against her, even when confronted with the evidence. It was as if she existed in a world separate from the one we were trying to piece together. As we built the case, the narrative became clearer, but the motive remained elusive. The sheer brutality of the act contrasted sharply with Anna's outward calm. This wasn't a crime of impulse, it was something far more chilling. Her indifference, both during the crime and in its aftermath, raised troubling questions about her state of mind. Was this the result of substance abuse, a mental break, or something darker? We were left with fragments of a story, each more disturbing than the last. A mother who came to save her daughter, a daughter who responded with unimaginable violence, and a crime that left everyone searching for answers in a sea of incomprehensible darkness. The morning after Anna Leikovic's arrest, we began unraveling the tangled threads of her life. On the surface, she had seemed like the perfect student and a young woman destined for success. Her social media presence was filled with carefully curated images of beauty and affluence, showing off an aspirational life of luxury and achievement. But beneath that polished facade, the reality of her life told a far darker story. Anna had been raised with privilege, her wealthy father ensuring she wanted for nothing despite being largely absent. Her mother, Parascovia, had worked tirelessly to provide a stable upbringing, though her frequent absence while working abroad had created distance between them. Anna's independence had grown unchecked, and with no one close enough to monitor her behavior, she had fallen into dangerous habits. Her foray into substance abuse, initially hidden from her family, spiraled out of control. It was this life of excess and recklessness that had brought her mother back to Moldova to save her daughter from herself. Interviews with those who knew Anna painted conflicting pictures of her character. Her professors described her as a dedicated and capable medical student, someone with the potential to excel in her field. Friends spoke of her charm and ambition, but also hinted at a volatile side, one that emerged under the influence of drugs and alcohol. There were whispers of erratic behavior, arguments, and a sense of entitlement that seemed to fuel her decisions. The stark duality of Anna's personality left us with more questions than answers. How could someone so intelligent and poised commit such an act of unfathomable brutality? The evidence was undeniable, but the motive remained elusive. It wasn't just anger, this was something far deeper, a detachment from humanity itself. We reviewed the crime scene again, trying to glean insights into her mindset. The meticulous way she had removed her mother's organs, the clinical precision of her actions, spoke of a chilling level of control. And yet, the act itself was frenzied, almost animalistic. It was as if Anna had switched between two personas, one methodical, the other consumed by rage. The juxtaposition was unsettling. Her behavior following the crime continued to baffle us. After the murder, Anna had taken a shower, styled her hair, and casually visited her boyfriend. Her request for champagne and her offhand confession to the crime were almost surreal in their detachment. It was as though she didn't grasp the enormity of what she had done, or perhaps she simply didn't care. Her boyfriend's account added another layer to the narrative. He described her as calm, almost serene, in the hours after the murder. When he confronted her about her cryptic statement, she deflected, leaving him unsure whether to believe her. His eventual discovery of the scene at her apartment confirmed his worst fears and brought us into the case. As we interviewed Anna, her responses were as unnerving as the crime itself. She answered questions with vague, nonsensical statements, often veering off topic. She displayed no remorse, no acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. Her indifference wasn't just a defense mechanism, it seemed genuine, as if she truly couldn't comprehend the gravity of her actions. The psychiatric evaluations we ordered provided some insight into her mental state, but no definitive answers. She exhibited signs of detachment from reality, a lack of empathy, and a flat affect that made it difficult to gauge her emotions. Whether this was the result of long-term substance abuse, an undiagnosed mental illness, or something more insidious was unclear. For her family, the revelations about Anna's actions were devastating. Her uncle, a man who had watched her grow up, struggled to reconcile the loving niece he remembered with the monster described in the reports. This was a good family, he told us. Her mother loved her so much. She did everything for her. His disbelief mirrored that of the entire community, which had been rocked by the crime. As the case progressed, theories about Anna's motives began to emerge. Some believed the murder was a spontaneous act of rage, fueled by substance abuse and the stress of her mother's intervention. Others speculated that it was a calculated act, driven by deep-seated resentment and a desire for control. But no theory fully explained the sheer brutality of her actions or her cold demeanor afterward. The contrast between Anna's public image and the reality of her crime left an indelible mark on all of us working the case. She had been a symbol of potential, a young woman with every opportunity to succeed. Yet, in one night of unspeakable violence, she had destroyed not only her mother's life but her own. As we continued to build the case, one question lingered. What could have turned someone like Anna into a killer? The answer remained as elusive as the motive itself, leaving us to grapple with the unsettling reality of what she had done. The courtroom was silent as Anna Leikovic entered for her arraignment. Her demeanor was unnervingly calm, almost detached. She didn't acknowledge the audience, the judge, or even her own defense team. Instead, her attention seemed focused elsewhere, on her nails, her clothes, her appearance. It was as though the gravity of the situation hadn't touched her at all. Her behavior only deepened the mystery surrounding her case. As the charges were read aloud, first-degree murder, mutilation, the words hung in the air like a heavy weight. But Anna remained unfazed. At one point, she even stood on the bench, flashing a peace sign to the courtroom, her expression a mix of defiance and indifference. It wasn't the reaction of someone facing a life-altering moment. It was something entirely different, something almost incomprehensible. The prosecution laid out the evidence in chilling detail, the timeline of events, the autopsy findings, the gruesome precision of the crime. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of a calculated and brutal attack. Witness statements, forensic reports, and Anna's own behavior in the aftermath left little doubt about her involvement. The question wasn't whether she had committed the crime, it was why. Her defense team took a different approach, arguing that Anna's actions were the result of a severe mental breakdown. They pointed to her erratic behavior, both during the crime and in the weeks leading up to it, as evidence of a fractured state of mind. Psychiatric evaluations were presented, showing signs of detachment from reality, a lack of emotional understanding, and potential psychoses. Their argument was clear: Anna was not in control of her actions and could not be held criminally responsible. The public and media, captivated by the sensational nature of the case, debated the validity of the defense's claims. Was Anna truly suffering from a mental illness, or was this a calculated move to avoid harsher punishment? The brutality of the crime seemed at odds with the calm and calculated way she had behaved afterward. It was a question that divided opinions both inside and outside the courtroom. Anna's behavior during the trial did little to help her case. She refused to cooperate with her lawyers, often ignoring their advice or interrupting proceedings with inappropriate comments. At one point, she laughed when a journalist asked if she had killed her mother, replying with a dismissive goodbye before being escorted out of the courtroom. Her lack of remorse or acknowledgement of the crime only added to the sense of unease surrounding her. As the trial progressed, the prosecution argued that Anna's actions were premeditated, pointing to the clinical precision of the attack and her calm demeanor afterward. They highlighted her refusal to show remorse and her unwillingness to cooperate with law enforcement. To them, this wasn't a case of mental illness, it was cold-blooded murder. The defense, however, presented a compelling case for Anna's mental incompetence. Experts testified about her long-term substance abuse, her potential dissociation during the crime, and her apparent inability to comprehend the gravity of her actions. They argued that Anna's behavior wasn't defiance, it was evidence of a deeper psychological issue, one that required treatment rather than punishment. In the end, the court ruled in favor of the defense. Anna was declared mentally unfit to stand trial and was absolved of criminal responsibility. The judge ordered her to be committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital where she would undergo long-term treatment. It was a decision that brought relief to some and outrage to others. For many, it felt like justice hadn't been served, that the brutal nature of the crime demanded harsher consequences. For the investigators who had worked tirelessly on the case, the ruling was bittersweet. We had pieced together the evidence, built a timeline, and uncovered the truth about that horrific night. But the answers we had sought, the reasons behind Anna's actions, remained elusive. The courtroom decision brought closure to the case, but it didn't erase the questions that lingered in all of our minds. Anna's story became a cautionary tale, a tragic reminder of what can happen when privilege, independence, and unchecked behavior collide. Her mother, Parascovia, had come back to Moldova to save her daughter, to pull her back from the brink. Instead, she had paid the ultimate price, a victim of her daughter's descent into darkness. The trial was over, but the shadow of what had happened would linger for years to come. After the trial, the shadow of Anna Leikovic's crime lingered over Comrat, a community grappling with the aftermath of an act so incomprehensible it defied reason. Anna's commitment to a high-security psychiatric hospital brought a form of resolution to the case, but it left many unanswered questions. For the family, the investigators, and the public, the ruling raised as many emotions as it settled. Parascovia's family struggled to find solace in the outcome. Her brother, who had described the mother-daughter bond as strong and loving, wrestled with disbelief. He had stood by his niece as she grew into adulthood, never imagining she was capable of such violence. The reality of Anna's actions shattered that illusion, leaving an indelible scar on the family. Anna's father, a polarizing figure in his own right, also faced public scrutiny. Speculation arose about his potential influence on Anna's behavior. His controversial history and detachment from her upbringing became points of contention. While investigators found no evidence linking him to the crime, the narrative surrounding his absence and perceived lack of guidance added another layer to the tragedy. In Comrat, the crime and its aftermath became a topic of whispered conversations and hushed debates. Some saw Anna as a victim of her own spiraling mental health, her descent fueled by substance abuse and the pressures of her ambitions. Others viewed her as a cold, calculating individual who had exploited the insanity defense to avoid a harsher sentence. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between, an enigma wrapped in the layers of a deeply troubled psyche. Anna's social media presence, once carefully curated to project a life of glamour and success, became a morbid curiosity for many. Her dormant Instagram account gained thousands of followers in the months after her sentencing, with archived posts circulating online. Dubbed the Monster of Comrat by local and international media, she had achieved a form of notoriety, though far removed from the fame she once sought. It was a grim irony that left a bitter taste in the mouths of those who had known her as a promising young woman. For the psychiatric hospital tasked with her care, Anna represented a challenge. The evaluations conducted before her sentencing had revealed a fractured mind, one unable to grasp the weight of her actions. Whether her detachment was a result of long-term substance abuse, underlying mental illness, or both, she required intensive treatment. The likelihood of her reintegration into society remained slim, but the possibility, however remote, offered a thread of hope for rehabilitation. The case left a profound impact on those who worked on it. As investigators, we had seen our share of horrific crimes, but Anna's case stood apart. It wasn't just the brutality of the act, it was the sheer detachment with which she carried it out and her chilling indifference in its aftermath. For months, we revisited the evidence, the interviews, the psychiatric reports, trying to make sense of what drove her to commit such an atrocity. But the answers were elusive, slipping through our fingers like smoke. Parascovia's murder also prompted broader conversations about mental health, substance abuse, and family dynamics. It served as a grim reminder of the importance of early intervention, of recognizing the signs of distress before they spiral into tragedy. Yet, it also highlighted the limits of understanding, the unsettling reality that even the closest bonds can break in ways we may never fully comprehend. For the people of Comrat, life moved on, though the memory of what had happened remained. Parascovia's friends and family honored her legacy as a dedicated mother and a woman who had worked tirelessly to provide for her daughter. Her death, while senseless, underscored the depth of her love and her determination to help Anna, even at great personal cost. As for Anna, her name became synonymous with one of the most chilling crimes in Moldova's history. Whether she would ever fully grasp the consequences of her actions or emerge from the confines of the psychiatric hospital remained uncertain. What was clear was that the echoes of her crime would reverberate for years, a cautionary tale about the fragility of the human mind and the devastating consequences when it fractures. For us, the case closed with a sense of unfinished business. Justice in its clinical form had been served, but the wounds it left, both literal and emotional, were far from healed. Anna's story was one we would carry with us, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most promising of lives. And in the quiet moments when the memories of the case resurfaced, one question always lingered: could it have been prevented?